Thank you for joining us for this North Metro TV televised debate. I'm Ben Hale. Sitting down today, I have Nolan West, the Republican candidate in Minnesota House 37B, and Susan Witt, the DFL candidate. Thank you both for being here with us, and we look forward to our debate this evening. Tonight, our debate will start with opening statements. After that, we'll go into a question and answer segment. After that, the candidates will have a chance to ask each other a question if they choose, and then we'll finish up with some closing statements tonight. Nolan, you are in the first chair by luck of the draw, so you get the first crack at it tonight. You have a 1-minute opening statement.
All right. My name is Nolan West. I am 26 years old. I've lived in Blaine my whole life. Growing up here, Radisson was just a 2-lane country road, and there are sod fields everywhere. Now Blaine is a thriving city, and anything you could possibly want is within a mile. And I want to make sure we can keep Blaine a thriving city, but we do have some challenges. First, healthcare costs are rising out of control, our taxes are way too high, and our roads really need to be repaired. And using my experience working in government, I'll be able to be more effective and pursue legislation on my first day. I won't need to learn the ropes because I already know what to do, and I can get it done for Blaine without having to wait. Thank you.
Thank you for your opening statement tonight. Susan, your opportunity for your opening statement now.
My name is Susan Witt, and I have lived in the area for 35 years with my husband. We are both retired teachers, having taught in the Spring Lake Park School District. We raised 3 children who went through the school district and have now long since graduated, and we're the very proud grandparents of a new grandson. I have been involved in my church as an active volunteer as well as the community. I've served in numerous leadership positions in which since moving here, and actually since the very beginning when we moved here. I am running for the House position because I feel we need to put the needs of families, students, and seniors first down at the Capitol.
Thank you very much. We'll move in now to our question and answer segment of our debate. Susan, you'll be first on our first question by being in the second chair there. And this race has already received much attention. So let's start our debate by just addressing it at the beginning. I'm going to ask you both, to what extent do past comments by a candidate have relevance today? Susan, you have 90 seconds.
As I said, I am a retired teacher. I had taught for 27 years in the Spring Lake Park School District. During that time, we always were involved in parent-teacher conferences where I was always having to be involved in direct contact with the public. I realize how important it is to be respectful at all times, dealing with all kinds of groups. I've also done lots of volunteer work where I have worked with people in the community and sometimes underprivileged families and a variety of different ethnic backgrounds. And I feel that anything that you say needs to be respectful at all times. Blaine is a very diverse community. People have told me that at the doors that sometimes they're living here because they enjoy that diversity and they want to raise their children in that environment.
Thank you for your answer. Nolan, same question to you. To what extent do past comments by a candidate have relevance today?
Well, the question's about myself. I want to say I feel terrible about the past Facebook posts. I was a dumb kid and just like to provoke people to get a rise out of them, and I thought I knew everything. And I've grown up since then, and those ideas are not who I am today. And I'm asking voters for a second chance.
Thank you for your answer. You always will have an opportunity for rebuttal time. If you choose to use it, you would have 15 seconds, Susan.
No.
Okay, and Nolan? All right, well, let's move on to another question. This question is, the first question I pulled out is dealing with public safety. See, Nolan, you'll be first on this question. It's clear both nationally and locally that tension is high between segments of the law enforcement community and minority communities. How will you work as a state legislator to create an environment to address these issues?
Well, there is a tremendous tension, as the news always tells us, if it bleeds, it leads. And we need to focus on training our police force in focusing on de-escalation, but we also must recognize that a situation can turn bad in an instant. I actually spent time at the Anoka County Sheriff's Office doing a use of force drill because I was curious about, going into there, police officers are, skittish. And being able to watch in real life scenarios how fast a situation can turn really opened my eyes. So we do need to focus on some reforms, but we also must make sure we're protecting our police officers because they're the ones whose lives are on the line.
Thank you for your answer. Susan, same question to you now. It's clear both nationally and locally that tension is high between segments of the law enforcement community and minority communities. How will you work as a state legislator to create an environment to address those issues?
I too agree. We definitely need to have increased training for our police officers. They do a tremendous amount of work that is extremely stressful. And because of that, they need additional training so that when they are in situations of crisis, they are prepared to react. There's also some de-escalation practices and I understood there was some funding at one time, but not all of that money has been received by police officers or police stations, and so that they've been able to get the training that they do need. Race, even though we tend to think about Minnesota nice, there is still a lot of societal racism that we need to address. And so I think increased discussions, involvement with the community, and having a lot of relational talks is a good way to begin.
Okay. Opportunity for rebuttal time if you choose. And did you need any extra time
No.
either? All right. Move to the next question. This question is about jobs. Susan, you'll be first on this question. What would you do to help create an environment for job creation in Minnesota?
Okay. Sometimes there's a job skills gap out there that we need to be discussing with business what kinds of skills are needed so that these skills are being offered at whether it's technical colleges or community colleges. That there's a lot of jobs out there. I can kind of give an example. Our son always thought about four-year college and found out there's a lot of technical jobs out there particularly in the Blaine area. And in finding out about that, he was able to get a 2-year degree and get an extremely well-paying job. They're trying to think about so that there's a lot of opportunities, but we need to make sure that the training is available, and we need to promote that training, both letting people know about some of these jobs, but as well as making sure that the skills are being taught so that people can have more jobs.
Thank you for your answer. Nolan, same question to you. What would you do to help create an environment for job creation in Minnesota?
Well, the number one thing, we need to encourage businesses to invest here. We're losing a lot of Minnesota-grown businesses to our tax policy. Medtronic is moving out, and they've been headquartered here for years. And so the first thing, we need to lower the taxes, particularly property taxes. You'll hear a lot, I've heard a lot about that, talking with businesses. And with an environment that allows businesses to invest here with minimal regulation will allow them to bring more jobs into Blaine and really help our economy thrive. And second, we do need to focus more on real jobs than going to college. So many people are told college is the only way. You've got to go spend $100,000 on a 4-year degree. And it's not the only way. There's people, I have a college degree, and there are plenty of people who don't that make more money than me. And because they learned valuable skills, and you don't need to go to a 4-year college to learn those skills.
Thank you for your answer. Opportunity for rebuttal time. Susan, you'd be first.
One of the I think it was some legislation that had been introduced about trying to help particularly small businesses, to encourage innovation, as well as making it possible to pass on a business without a lot of burden to that business owner.
Okay, opportunity for rebuttal time? All right, let's move on to another question here. This question deals with bonding projects. Nolan, do you want to see a bonding bill passed in 2017? And if so, how much do you think should be spent?
Probably. I mean, typically the first year of any biennium is not a bonding year, it's a budget year. But since we got a very tiny bonding bill passed this past session, I could see that being on the table right away. Particularly 105th Avenue was in that bonding bill. And we had $3 million from Blaine, $3 million from the bonding from the state to fund a total renovation of the road, because the road's incredibly dangerous, especially when the World Cup's in town. You've got a lot of kids walking across a street where the speed limit's 55 miles an hour. And Blaine needs that money, but that bill died in the Senate, unfortunately, this last time. So I wouldn't mind seeing it brought up again in the earlier, particularly because that road is a real problem.
Can I ask you how much, you have a little time left, a dollar amount. What do you think is the right amount to spend on a bonding bill if it comes up in 2017?
Well, it depends on the budget forecasts. You know, you can't really peg we don't know what the money's coming in. We have a projected surplus, but that surplus has gotten smaller every single projection that came in. So putting a number on it really is just a wild guess. I mean, I want to see 105th in that bonding bill. That's my number one priority.
Thank you. Susan, same question to you. Do you want to see a bonding bill passed in 2017? And if so, how much do you think should be spent?
I too would have a hard time coming up with an exact total dollar amount, but it does need to be passed this year, quickly at the beginning of the session and not waiting till the end. As Nolan said, 105th has been long neglected. It was kind of passed over by the county, turned over to the city, but they need state funding to assist in that. The National Sports Center as well needed some expansion and some money to help in that area. That particular area, the National Sports Center and that road, is visited by, it's only number 2 behind the Mall of America is about the number of people that come into this area. That is got to be our number 1 priority as far as part of that bonding bill, because it is such an important road and it's traveled on by so many people.
Thank you. Anyone need any rebuttal time on that?
Well,
yes.
Just one extra comment is 105th, one of the reasons the state should bond for it, it's a city road, and typically city roads you don't bond for, but the vast majority of the property it's on is adjacent to state land. It serves state property, so I think it's very reasonable for the state to bond for it.
Thank you. Did you have anything else to add? Okay, move on to our next question then. Environment is the next topic. Susan, are there any additional environmental protections that you would put into place as a state legislator?
Probably our number 1 priority would be to make sure that we're protecting our water. As when we think about infrastructure, I think we normally think about roads and bridges, but actually part of that infrastructure is our waters, and that's even including the whole water system that we don't see, that's underground, that takes the water that we are going to be getting out of our taps. And as those are aging, I think we need to be looking at that quality to make sure that it remains high. We've got a lot of beautiful lakes and rivers in Minnesota that we want to make sure are protected, as well as the groundwater, because that is part of our water system as well, and it's one that we use even though we don't see it.
Thank you for your answer. Nolan, same question to you. Are there additional environmental protections that you would put in place as a state legislator?
Well, Minnesota has a long tradition of taking care of its environment. We've done remarkably well. There are very few disasters or any of that nature that you can pin on inadequate environmental protections. So I would say we're doing a very good job right now, and I would say the main thing on the environment issue is to try and streamline it the best we can. I've listened to a lot of contractors who do work with different projects, and they always complain about how many pass-throughs they have to do and how many different agencies they have to talk to and how many different people. And it really might be better to not narrow the scope, just maybe consolidate some agencies, but keep the same regulations, because it seems, from what I hear from the people who actually live their lives and own the businesses, is that it's redundant and they talk to different people all the time, and it really could be done a lot more efficiently.
All right. Thank you for your answer. Any rebuttal on that?
No.
Okay, any extra time? All right. We'll move on. I'm going to keep offering it. So, next question, dealing with the overall state budget. Nolan, I'm going to come to you first on this question. As a state legislator, you will be inundated with requests for funding. There'll be lots of different organizations, cities, counties, whoever it might be that will say, we need funding for this. And if they get into the budget, they're not often going to come back the next biennium and say, you know what, we don't need that money anymore, or please give us less. But you also have to balance a budget. And so how will you, as a state legislator, prioritize, go through all those requests that you get for funding, and come out with a budget that you can be proud of personally? Nolan, you'd be first on this.
The number one priority, and I think this is a priority of every state representative, is their district. The people who vote for you are your employer, and you're there to advocate on their behalf. So when somebody asks, there's requests for additional funding, that's the very first thing that'll go through my mind is, how does this affect the people who entrusted me to steward their tax dollars, these particular 30,000 some people? And after that, then there's a statewide significance, because it is we make statewide decisions. Primarily, I'd like to see our budget used for what it's constitutionally mandated for, and that's transportation. And we need to make sure we're using money to fund that adequately, because we have a lot of problems that aren't getting addressed, like 35W. It's needed an extra lane for years, and they have plans for it, but it's never been funded. And Highway 10 has a bunch of improvements that were offered in the bonding bill that didn't get through that maybe we could fund with actual dollars. And 105th, of course, but I'm very optimistic we'll be able to solve that next year. But that's transportation and my district are the number one and two things.
Thank you for your answer. Susan, same question to you. Have all these requests for funding, want to put out a balanced budget. In the end, how will you prioritize budget needs if you were a state legislator?
Well, I too think you need to represent and speak to the needs that that the constituents are bringing forth. And transportation is certainly one of them, and it is part of our constitutional mandate, but education is as well. And education has long had a tradition in our district of receiving a lot of support from its citizens through levies that I would really like us to not see the school district have to go out for levies, because the state is giving them adequate funding. So making sure that we have the transportation covered as well as education, and that we're providing a Minnesota that can really work for all people. But particularly, I suppose, we'd be trying to keep our citizens in Blaine and make sure that their needs are being met.
Thank you. Anything that you'd like to add to that? And you either?
No.
All right. Next question deals with taxes. Susan, I will come to you first on this question. What is one specific change you would like to see made to the Minnesota tax code?
Well, first and foremost, I would want to see some tax cuts for the middle class families. We have a lot of hardworking people in Minnesota that are finding it difficult to make ends meet because they are maybe sharing a little bit higher level of tax burden than what they should be, so that it's making it difficult for them to not only make ends meet, but to add and contribute to our growing economy. If they do not have any extra spending money, they're not going to be able to support businesses in the area as much as they would otherwise. So I think that would be one of my primary areas of tax cutting.
Thank you very much. Nolan, same question to you. What's one specific change you would like to see made to the Minnesota tax code?
Well, it's kind of depressing. It's only limited to one. But number one, and I think this tax is just kind of outrageous, is we're one of the few states that tax people on their Social Security income. And why? I mean, you're forced to put that money in the first place, and now we tax you when you try and get your money back. And we're one of the few states that do it. Most states don't do it. And those are some of the most vulnerable people out there, are our senior citizens. You know, my grandma lives on only Social Security. Actually, she lives in Club West in Blaine too. But she could have a couple $100 extra in her pocket without having to pay income tax on that income. And it's really not income per se, since you're already putting it there in the first place, and most states don't do it. And it's great for helping those who honestly probably need the most help.
Thank you. Would you like to respond? Rebuttal time?
I have heard this at the door too from many seniors, that this, because of the fact that we're one of the few states that do tax. I also would like to see us relook at property tax as well. Taxing on what you earn makes more sense and equitable than what you have.
Thank you. Would you like rebuttal time for you as well, if you'd like?
Well, no, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to a question about healthcare. Nolan, we'll come to you on this one. It's a three-part question, and I'd like to ask you to please try and answer all three parts of it, but still in our 90 seconds. All right?
All right.
In what ways has MNsure been a success? In what ways has MNsure been a failure? And how would you change MNsure? Nolan, you're up first.
Well, MNsure has been absolutely awful. It promised to reduce premiums. So there's its number one promise. Premiums have gone up every year. Insurers are leaving the marketplace. This next year, the average increase in healthcare premiums will be 36 to 66%, and that's the average. That's an enormous increase that's going to bankrupt family budgets. And it's been a success. I mean, if I have to give it a success, it's after a year of abject failure, the website does now work, and that is a good thing, but it has cost countless of unnecessary dollars and has really had poor results overall.
How would you change it?
Change it, we need to sit down the insurers and listen to what they have to say to get them back in the marketplace. Because one of the reasons why the cost is going up so quickly is 2 years ago, when Preferred One left, they had the vast majority of the lower priced plans. And that turns out they had 6 out of 10 people who subscribed through MNsure had a Preferred One plan. And they left the marketplace. That's how bad it is. So we need to sit them down and say, why did you leave? And then figure out what we can do to bring them back. Because if we can reintroduce competition, the system will be a lot better and less expensive. Because right now, about half the counties in the state only have one option, and that's ridiculous.
Thank you for your answer. Susan, same question to you now. In what ways has MNsure been a success? In what ways has MNsure been a failure? And how would you change MNsure?
I would say that the most successful part of MNsure is the fact that now we only have a little over 4% of the people in Minnesota who are not covered by health insurance. And that is the lowest in the nation. On the other hand, yes, the premiums have been going up. This has been a continual problem, though, with insurance always seeming to add more and more costs. I served on our health committee for many years in our school district, and we looked at that. We were looking at insurance companies coming in with large rates. We were always trying to negotiate and get the price down. I think we need to get, obviously, not as many young people came into the system and healthy, which would help to lower and spread out the costs. As far as fixing it, I too think we need to end up getting the insurance companies, because that's been their insurance rates plus the extremely high burdensome deductibles that have been added have made it very difficult for families, because most don't even meet the deductible. I mean, they never get that much in the average family.
Thank you. Any rebuttal that you would have? Anything else that you would have?
No.
All right. Next question, education. Susan, do you support increased access to pre-K education in Minnesota?
Yes, I do. Having been an educator, I spent most of my career teaching third grade. The last several years of my career, a lot of time was spent on interventions, trying to help third graders become better readers, because the goal is usually to be a good reader by third grade so that you can now read to learn as opposed to spending all of your time learning to read. The best intervention is an early intervention. We have too many children coming to kindergarten not prepared to learn. Therefore, if we can give them a much better foundation, they can be successful by the time they get to third grade and be solid readers. The research shows that the investment is overwhelmingly, it's paid back many times. Plus, if kids are behind, rarely do they ever really, truly catch up.
Thank you for your answer. Nolan, same question to you. Do you support increased access to pre-K education in Minnesota?
Yeah, I do support increased access. Last year, the legislature actually invested quite a bit of money, $150 million, I believe, in early learning scholarships to help lower-income families get access to this early care. They're the ones who need it the most because they can't necessarily afford to leave a family member home to take care of the kids. They don't necessarily have a family unit to take care of that. We need to make sure that we don't let kids slip through the cracks, especially at a young age. And with increased access, you'll hopefully be able to see some real improvements and allow people to get better jobs and allow families to be more stable. And, you know, that's what it's all about, really.
Opportunity for rebuttal time?
Yes, there was money provided last year, but it obviously was not enough to cover all the needs. 60% of the school districts who applied for some of that money were not able to get it because there was not enough money.
And opportunity for rebuttal time if you choose. All right. Another question about education came out here. Nolan, you'll be first on this one. Are there practical solutions that you would propose to close Minnesota's persistent achievement gap?
I think one of the focuses we can do is focus on real-world job skills. Because when kids leave high school, part of the achievement gap is they can't go get to college. They have no options really outside of their high school degree, and sometimes they don't even get that, and that's really unfortunate. We can encourage them to learn practical skills in school and allow them to have a marketable skill when they leave school and make them feel like it's more valuable. Because when a kid feels like he's actually learning something he can use in real life, they get way more engaged, they get excited. And if we implemented more real-world, basic technical skills that kids could get a job straight out of high school that makes $40,000 a year, it's conceivable and it's possible. Or they could even just go to a 2-year college, which isn't too expensive, and many could achieve that. But for closing the achievement gap, I think encouraging that type of learning will encourage kids to learn and close the gap in that way.
Thank you for your answer. Susan, are there practical solutions you would propose to close Minnesota's persistent achievement gap?
One of the things, I'd go back to that pre-K. If we can give kids a better start, we're going to be hopefully able to make sure that they have success right from the very beginning, so that by the time they get to high school, that's where we're seeing the achievement gap. In the testing of students at the high school level, there is still not, there's a lot of minority groups that have unfortunately not been addressed. Their needs have not always been addressed. As far as offering any kind of other kinds of real job skills, most of the money that was allocated and had been spent before on VOTEC type jobs, there's not enough money for the schools anymore, that they've cut most of those positions. So I think we are looking at having to direct kids towards using those two-year college degrees, technical colleges. But I think to have them even be finishing high school, I think we really need to look at the very beginning. Give kids a good foundation so that they have success from the beginning. They can feel success as successful learners.
Thank you. Would anyone like rebuttal time? All right. We're going to move on to the last question that I have for you this evening. It's a question that we're asking in every single debate and every single interview we do throughout this political season. Across America, we are seeing deep divisions between races, ages, between religions, between socioeconomic classes, between political parties. So my question is, how will you work to foster a spirit of unity, both in the legislature and in your own community? And let's see here, Susan, you are first on this question.
Okay. I do know that there have been some strides to try to get different community groups together communicating. For example, during Ramadan, there was the Blaine Muslim Community Center opened their doors and invited community members in. We were able to, they explained a little bit about themselves. We were able to sit down at a table and talk with people. There were police officers, people from city council. It was one, I think the more opportunities that we can set up like that for dialogue between groups, the better off we'll be. The more we learn about each other and more find out that we have a way more in common than we have differences, that would be a good beginning.
Thank you for your answer. Nolan, same question to you. We are seeing deep divisions between races, ages, religions, socioeconomic classes, and political parties. How will you work to foster a spirit of unity, both in the legislature and in your community?
Number one thing is tone down the rhetoric. I mean, just yesterday, our presidential debate is absolute travesty of what we're experiencing in our political system, and that I believe that's an expression of the deep divisions we have. But you're not going to catch me saying there will be awful human beings who want to go for policy positions I don't believe in. You know, I don't think my opponent is evil-minded, you know, trying to control businesses and create a socialist economy in Minnesota. You know, everybody is working for what they think is best, and I'm not going to delve into any bloody rhetoric that gets people fired up enough to go nuts. And we need more people to do that, and I want to be part of that civil movement that's not decrying everybody as a villain and then their own side as a hero. I mean, everybody's coming from a good place, and we need to figure out how to work together for our common goals.
Thank you. Rebuttal time for anyone? Okay. Well, that's all the questions that I have for you this evening. Now you have an opportunity to ask each other a question if you so choose. Nolan, you have the first opportunity if you want to ask a question of your opponent.
No question.
Okay, thank you. Susan, you have an opportunity if you choose to ask a question of your opponent.
Well, I just had one that as you said at the beginning, that you were even quoting that some of the insensitive material that you posted on Facebook was because of your youth and you were just being a provocative kid. But a couple of those posts were done after, just within the last year, after the shooting by a white supremacist at the historic Black church in Charleston. And I was just wondering why you did not remove them at that time, if you waited until the Star Trib brought them to light before you removed them, and I was just wondering why.
Well, for the posts, we get those posts, I didn't make any comments. You know, I didn't editorialize anything. It was merely sharing other posts. And those posts were not, you know, particularly virulent, and I don't think my Facebook page drove anything crazy, you know, like people didn't care what I said. And I don't think there's anything particularly dangerous about those posts, and I didn't make any comments in those posts.
Thank you. You have opportunity to respond for 15 seconds if you choose. No? All right. We're going to move now into our closing statements. Last chance for comments this evening. Nolan, you'll be first, and you have 1 minute with your closing statement.
Thank you for the time to talk to everyone today. It was pretty fun. And my focus this entire election season will be on the issues. And I've learned a lot, and I've come in learning a lot, and it's been a great experience. And we need to make sure we reform healthcare in our state, because that's what's strangling family budgets. That's really the ultimate killer. I've talked to people who say, I always thought my mortgage would be the biggest monthly expense. And it's not the case anymore. Yeah, it's absolutely out of control, and MNsure has started this whole debacle with its promise of lower premiums that it didn't even come close to delivering on. You know, they've gone up every year. And I will also focus on tax relief for our families, because we are one of the highest tax states in the nation, and we don't want to lead in that category. We need to make sure we have a pro-family, pro-business, pro-success atmosphere in our state and Blaine itself. And I ask the voters of Blaine to support me in that endeavor.
Thank you for your time this evening. Susan, your opportunity for your closing statement.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank my opponent, and especially thank you to the North Metro TV for this opportunity to share our views. I would like to be able to take my experience as a public servant, both as a teacher and a lifetime of a volunteer at my church and community, and take that to the legislature. If elected, I would really be representing all of the people in Blaine, and I would want to, I will be open to listening to all concerns and being able to listen and hopefully take those things to heart. I just am asking for your vote come November 8th, or earlier if you should want to do absentee or in-person voting that is allowed now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to again thank you both for taking time out of your schedules to come in here today and talk with us about the issues. Thank you very much for doing that. And I want to remind you, you can always head to northmetrotv.com for complete local decision coverage. It's all there for you. There's opportunities to read candidate biographies on there for this race and many other races, everything that we're covering right up to Election Day. More debates like this are also posted there on northmetrotv.com. It's all there for you. It's your local hub for your local election coverage. And remember, we'll be following these races all the way right up into Election Day, and concluding with several hours of live coverage on election night, where we'll be bringing you your local results. This is the only place you'll find it, here on North Metro TV. I've been your host, Ben Hale, and I want to thank the candidates for Minnesota House 37B, Republican Nolan West and Democrat Susan Witt. Thank you again for being here, and thank you all for watching.